Welcome to the Marathon Investigation Podcast, where we discuss and debate the latest news regarding course cutters, bandits, and bib mules.
Hey, welcome to Marathon Investigation Podcast. This is Derek Murphy with my co-host for episode 1, Scott Coomer.
Hey.
So Scott is, if you've listened to podcast appearances in the past, Scott has his own podcast, 10 Junk Miles. I actually was on that one, and we'll post that up. And we have what we call the 2-hour argument. So Scott is kind of there as, to keep me in check and to, we'll definitely argue at times and disagree at times. And so I think it'll be kind of entertaining and, fun and, be some good debate. So I'm really jumping all over the place on this one.
Well, I think we should set the stage first of, how did we meet and how did our paths cross? And I think that for me, the first thing that I ever remembered seeing from you is posts in the Facebook group Trail and Ultra Running about marathon cheaters. And then I saw these pylons on top of that. And my reaction was always, what the hell does this have to do with trail and ultra running? Because usually it was a marathon.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Then that's how I was going to start too. I kind of lost track of that. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. I'll just kind of start that again from scratch.
Yeah. Well, the first time that I ever saw you was in the Trail and Ultra Running Facebook group. And in that group, you would post your articles, and then I would say, what the hell does this have to do with trail and ultra running? And it's interesting because in that group, there's trail runners and ultra runners, but then there's also kind of diehard roadies. And it seems to me that at that time, I would say, and you can tell me if you agree with this, that there's been kind of a shift with respect to the way that ultra and trail runners look at cheating, and it probably came about after the Kelly Agnew incident.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's funny you mentioned the Kelly Agnew thing because I experienced the same thing when I first started my website or when it first became kind of public, where people were like, hey, who the hell is this guy, who made him the police of marathoning? And, hey, everyone runs their own race. Who are they hurting? I get that kind of thing. So, after a while and after some of the more egregious cases came out, I think a lot of people softened on that stance or the supporters were louder than the detractors, and there's still the detractors. And so then the Kelly Agnew was really the first article I wrote about ultra marathoning. And so then I kind of got that same, feedback again, like, hey, what's it matter? Hey, we can police ourselves and all that. But I think the shift with Kelly was because he won so many races. He wasn't just some guy cheating just to claim he did 100-miler or he, for a 40-hour race. I mean, he literally, it was over a dozen victories that ended up getting him disqualified. So I think that's when people realize, okay, it's not victimless.
Yeah. Well, and so when I would comment in Trail and Ultra, then I would get piled on by these marathoners, and this is probably clear if they listen to our interview between the two of us. But my issue isn't so much with respect to what you're doing, but as much as about the public shaming element that comes with it, the pile-on, the vitriol, that, all of a sudden there's hundreds and hundreds of people sharing these articles and talking about how terrible these people are. And because I'm kind of a sympathizer, I put myself in their shoes and I just see their world collapsing.
Yeah, and we talked about that a bit. I think it was probably shortly after might have been a little bit after the Jane CO one, which was the biggest article that went the most viral. She was the runner who was a half marathon in Florida, and she's a very talented runner. She's a very fast runner, but it was a very hot day and she cut the course. She had a huge negative split, and she missed the timing mat, so it was all pretty obvious. And it was either second or third, and now I forget. But she went on the podium, she posed, she got her award, and all that. And then on top of it. That article just went viral for a number of reasons. One, she went to Harvard. She wrote for Huffington Post, and famously, I think it was the very first photo I actually purchased from Marathon Photo because I saw her watch in the finisher pick. You could zoom in and tell how many miles she did. So she did 11.6 miles of the 13.1. So all those kind of elements combined. Oh, and she biked the course afterwards to try to fake a GPS route. So there was pretty much every element you could find in that story. So it absolutely, that was the first I thought I was viral before that. That's the first truly viral article I did. I probably got over 1 million hits on that one, and it was trending on all the news. Mainstream media was picking it up, and what I thought I was kind of protecting her. I never named her. I didn't mention Harvard. I didn't mention anything else, but it wasn't hard to figure out. And so when it got figured out and it got picked up by, I think, local media, then I think the New York Post picked it up shortly thereafter, and then it just, from there it just kind of grew, and it's that level shocked me, and I got uncomfortable with the amount of attention that she was getting as well.
So is that the time that you became the marathon investigator?
It was really it was a bit before that. I would say that race was like in January. Even it was the prior year around Boston. That's when a couple key incidents, key things kind of brought me more to the public. Really before that, in the beginning of, I guess at the beginning of 2016, I was doing the blog anonymously, and no one really knew about it. Then leading up to Boston, I wrote an article about a blogger, Gia Alvarez, and she was a pretty popular, and I had no idea how popular she was. She was a pretty popular blogger at the time, and she wrote, and I was aware that someone had written me about her, but I didn't really think a whole lot about it. I was aware that she had entered, Boston illegally. As I say illegally, basically, she had given her bib the prior year, her Boston bib, to a friend. Her friend requalified at Boston, and Gia used her friend's time to enter herself. So it's kind of tricky, but basically she gave her bib away 1 year. Her friend ran a qualifying time. She used her friend's time to enter herself into Boston. And because of that, she got a lifetime ban from BAA. And I didn't report her. I wasn't involved in any of that up front. But then she reported on her blog that I give my bib away and I got a lifetime ban. And so I just kind of wrote a quick article. Really, the reason I wrote it was because Runner's World was doing a profile on me, and I hadn't written any real content in months. I'm like, I was going to write about Gia after the Runner's World came out, so now I'm just going to do a quick article about it, kind of correcting and say, she didn't tell the whole story. She wasn't banned because she gave her bib away. She was banned because she used her friend's time to get in Boston. And that went pretty mainstream. So that's the first time I was doing any kind of news articles, newspaper articles. So, and that was a week before the Runner's World story on me came out. So those two things happened at once. In Runner's World, that they were just profiling my work on it, where I found over 60 people that cheated to enter Boston. So that profile went out. And so within a week or two of each other, those two things happened. And that's when it kind of, people became aware of me.
So then at some point, shortly after your, the Jane Soul article, after that, I posted
Jane CO.
Yeah. Shortly after that, I posted just generally on my social media, when are people going to stop giving attention to this fucking marathon investigation guy, because I'm tired of him. And that turned into like a huge debate between friends and followers and 10 Chuck Mile fans, and then you chimed in, and it was like
that was the first. Before then, I think I just knew of you as the guy who kept on posting, hey, what's this have to do with trail and ultra running? And then I would make a joke, say, hey, I just post pictures of my feet, or and so anything like that. So it was kind of a joke, I think you're getting your point across too. But then you posted that, and you posted that in a couple places, and I definitely saw that, and and we started the debate there, and then you invited me to come on your podcast. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll debate anybody. I rarely block anybody, which some people okay, I'll just block Scott and be done with him. I don't see this, he won't see me anymore. But I like to have a debate. I like to defend my stance, and I think there's there's a reason I do what I do, and there's a reason I do it publicly, which isn't accomplished by doing it privately sometimes.
Well, and I think that you can't be beyond criticism or reproach either, because then that's giving you like the right to be the judge and the jury, and for nobody else to chime in, and that'd be just a toxic situation where if nobody could cast shade on what it is that you're doing.
Oh yeah, no, and absolutely, and again, the legitimate criticism, I'm fine with that, and there's people who've kind of criticized me early, and then they kind of now I'm close friends with them, and you're probably as big of vocal critic as just about anybody, and as far as in the within the social media community. But again, it was you had legitimate concerns, and I'll talk to you if it's the trolls I don't have the patience with. And, I definitely have some of the trolls who again, I had the troll who accused me of cheating and just throws up random allegations, and you have one of those too. So or maybe more than one, but yeah, so those I don't have patience for. But where it's the legitimate criticism, I'll keep the debate up with them all day. Be happy to.
So then whether or not the Marathon Investigator was a good thing became a subject of discussion separate apart from all that. And I think I did an interview for Runner's World UK where you came up too. They called me and asked for a quote, and it was about that same time.
Oh,
we talked about social media and shame. And, there's a really good book by John Rawson called So You've Been Publicly Shamed. Anybody that's interested in that subject, they should definitely read that book because it kind of gives you a look at what it's like to be the person who's having the internet collapse all around them and just, how scary that can be.
Yeah, and I had an article that I've reposted a number of times where the difference between holding somebody accountable and public shaming. And there's a couple examples I brought out. I don't remember the name. And they're kind of dated now. But you had the woman who made a tweet. She was going to Africa and said, "I hope I don't get AIDS." She made a tweet when she got on her flight. By the time she was off the flight, she lost a job, and it was viral over social media, and she didn't have many followers, but somebody, the right person retweeted it, and she was fired by the time she got off the plane. Is that okay? Was that justified? Then you had, was it Rachel Dolezal, the NAACP, the woman who's, lied about her heritage, and that was, so I said, okay, that one's probably more of a holding accountable situation, versus, the woman who made a bad judgment with a tweet and was fired by the time she got off the plane.
Yeah, that's Justine Sacco. She is in the So You've Been Publicly Shamed book. She's like a whole chapter of that. And then there's also a girl. There was a girl that liked to take funny and ironic photos. Like she would stand in front of a no smoking sign, smoking a cigarette, or things like that. And she was in front of a sign in Arlington that said "Be quiet, be respectful," and it's like her shouting and holding up the swear finger. And that girl's life was just destroyed.
And that's crazy. Yeah, so that's where it's it's definitely. I mean, every time I write an article, I'm I do kind of find myself, okay, how this is I mean, what's I can kind of gauge the reaction sometimes. Sometimes I'm surprised, what goes crazy and what doesn't. And so it's definitely a tightrope as far as so
let me ask you
what
this.
I write about, and
have you ever had an article that you were like, this is going to be kryptonite, this thing's going to be crazy, and then no one cared?
Oh, yeah. What I care about is not always what everyone else cares about. The story, and I've probably written 5 stories on this topic. And some people have cared, people in the industry have cared. It was about the one where the travel agency, the French travel agency, was involved in faking results to get runners into Boston. Basically, I caught them when I was doing my first review of Boston, the one the Runner's World did, where I just kind of did my algorithm, and I was going through. I probably went over 1,500 finishers to try to find who cheated, and I found a bunch of runners who qualified at this French marathon in Mount Saint Michel. Like, that's a small. Why am I getting so many people from that race? So it turns out this travel agent was either bribed or just coerced the race director to add these runners into results for a marathon they never ran with Boston qualifying times, and then they would sell them as travel packages to the runners. So the runners were kind of unknowing. They thought they just legitimately bought a foreign travel bib, which those things, they do exist. Boston does have foreign travel partners where they have guaranteed entry bibs. It's a very small amount. And so the runners weren't really cheating. It was the travel agent. Then the following year, I found the same travel agent himself. He carried multiple bibs across the finish line in the I believe it was the Calgary Marathon or the Ottawa Marathon. I forget which. But again, he was basically being the bib mule, carrying bibs across so that he could sell them as parts of travel packages for runners to run Boston. So like, man, this is huge. The industry, and then it's like, very little reaction as to what I would have thought. And then occasionally, I'll write an article which I think is a throwaway article, and I'm looking at my my page counts, and it give you an idea, like, any given time, if I don't have a new article, I'll have like 30 people on the page at a time. I publish an article, usually gets up in, around 100 for a short time, then dips down. And, so I know I go big when I like publish an article and all of a sudden I see 300 people on my site. Like, okay. And then it just grows and grows, as it gets shared, it goes crazy. My server crashes, I have to upgrade and yell at the, the provider. But yeah, so sometimes I'm just surprised. I'm like, why is this one getting the traction, and this other one didn't? And some of it has to do with Facebook's algorithms and see how many people see the posts and how quickly it takes off. But there's still times when I'm a little bit surprised, and other ones where I've written articles that I really care about and people don't care. I mean, people care about the banditing, but it's not affecting someone getting to Boston. So it's a lot, more people, so that I'll get some views. But it's not that. And I know the banditing's kind of, against a lot of the runners who hate cheaters aren't, so passionate about the banditing. But I think the race directors appreciate when I kind of get the word out there.
So and then to play the story forward, I do this interview, we kind of agree to disagree and continue with our existence of me saying, why are you posting this? And people should just stop sharing his shit. And, and then at some point in time, I have a friend who has an incident where she runs into a cheater. And she contacts me and we find out that there's something suspicious about this whole thing. And actually what it was a girl that she knew had finished a 50 miler and she said, oh, which one? And then she blocked her on social media. And she's like, well, that's kind of weird. Why would she block me? And so then we started investigating her. We found her post where she said she finished the 50 miler and something didn't seem right. And we got you involved and you told us that it was some marathon, Revel marathon, some downhill marathon, I think somewhere.
So my first thought was, okay, well, maybe, yeah.
Well, and so what it turns out is
maybe it was legit because I see a lot of people who, have outlying times at those downhill marathons. So it's like, okay, well, maybe she did run a fast time there.
Well, no, and it wasn't so much the time. It wasn't she was fast. It was more of she said she ran a 50 miler and there wasn't a 50 miler.
Oh, that's right.
What was she doing? And it turns out she did a marathon that didn't take place that week. And what we realized was that she took a picture from a marathon and then edited out the other people in the picture and then reposted it and said, I just finished a 50 miler using that marathon. It was this diabolical, like, why is this girl working so hard to say that she ran a 50 mile? So, but anyway, to make a long story short, it's funny then that this guy that's criticizing the marathon investigator is like all in on this project of figuring this thing out. And I'm having so much fun trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's what I enjoyed. I enjoyed looking through all the tedium of looking, A, figuring out a method to kind of prioritize it, and then B, going through the tedium. And, whenever you'd find a cheater, you'd be like, you get a little bit of kind of the adrenaline kind of going. It's like, wow, okay, I figured it out. Or you look at something like, this person cheated, but you got to try to, okay, how do I prove it? How do I figure it out? So, that's the part. Again, I enjoy going through the data and solving the problem. I hate writing the articles, and I hate the confrontations which inevitably ensue. On occasion. But I like doing the research and making it right.
And then I just recently had another one in my group where a girl finished a 100-miler that we're all just like, there's no way that this really happened. And figuring that out and getting to the, what is the evidence and blah, 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 and then that was very exciting. But then at the end of the day, I think it was one of those where it was like, we can't prove that there was cheating, but we just know that there was.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it was, and again, the race made the right decision. And so I was like, all right, I could. Again, and that was a case where I decided, okay, I'd hold back. I mean, it's made partially because you were involved, and you kind of knew this person, and I'm like, all right, and where if I would have just kind of seen it on my own, that would have been one I'd been, that I would have quickly been all over it. But everything ended up working out, and I hadn't heard, against, she shared, I think what kind of got me was like, I'm not sure if, it seemed like they were real hesitant to do what was obvious. I say real hesitant. Within a couple of days, they did the right thing. But it's like, she goes, she sent photos, and unless they really went to extreme lengths to get these, to get those photos and had transportation, we're going to leave her in. And then she had sent me the photos. I'm like, these are just like, those prove nothing. They're like right towards the end of the trail. There's really nothing, saying what time they were taken. So I'm like, if these photos are the evidence he kept her in, I was very shocked. So and so the evidence didn't impress me.
Well,
and I think I shared the photo, with you, and it was like, we couldn't figure out how that proved that she, had done it.
Well, what's bizarre to me is that, like for example, in that instance, you have a girl, for the listeners, that didn't have any chip timing after like mile 47 or something. And she finished in such a manner that she would have negative split the course by like 4 hours or something, like it's like when you tell the story,
it was significant.
Yeah. Anybody who knows ultra running would say, oh, there's no way that ever happened. It just didn't happen. But, at the same time, what I
found, and the timer said it was only 30 minutes, so you did the math there, and she forgot her chip at the when she changed clothes, and it was.
But what I found really
weird.
Odd was that, like, if I was a race director and someone came to me and said, "I think Derek cheated," and I said, "Derek, you don't have any splits, I'm going to have to disqualify you," it would be really cut and dried for me. No chip, no time. You're out. Why did these people
and if
fight
you
against
the person
it?
Cheated, you say, "Hey, yeah."
We had a long delay. Did I lose you?
I'm not hearing you, Scott. You still there?
I'm still here. Hello?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I lost you.
I just didn't understand why. Like, it seemed strange to me that race director was like fighting with every inch of their body to not disqualify this person when it was obvious.
Yeah, and I think it was the timer, not the race director, to be fair. I think the race director was on board and the timer was the one fighting because he said he saw her come in. And so, yes, I think because he initially defended her, he kind of felt the need to continue until it was to the point where, all right, it made no sense.
We got to get him on the show.
And again, I think they did the right thing.
We should interview him. Derek? Hello?
You keep on cutting on me. You keep cutting out on me.
That's weird. Yeah. I got a solid connection right now, so I don't know.
You had been early on, but I could hear you going. But.
That's okay. We'll edit it. We should try to get him on the show.
Yeah. You have some contacts there, so anyone you suggest would be great. So so it's definitely interesting with investigating. And then it's as far as going public, and I think Kelly Agnew was a perfect example of why I feel the need to go public in some of these cases, because Kelly Agnew had been disqualified from a handful of races before I wrote the article about him hiding out in the porta potty at across the years. And again, once it went public, that's when he stopped doing it. I mean, he dropped off the face of the earth. So that's kind of like, for years, races would quietly disqualify or remove someone from the results, and it wouldn't stop the behavior from going forward in many cases. So I think as much as I hate, the word public shaming, by putting that out there, we stopped Kelly, from continuing to cheat his way to victories. The thought is, okay, that's going to stop somebody else from trying to do that as well. They don't want to be the next Kelly Agnew. Maybe they, were on their way, or at the lower level, people, be looking at just Boston qualifiers and marathons. Now I think people who are aware of the site would think twice. But before doing that, thinking nobody was looking and no one cared.
What bothers me about that one, and what bothers me about a lot of these, is I want to know why. I want to know how it started and why they did it and why they didn't stop. And I need to understand that, and I can't.
Yeah, because rarely do you get the full admission. Sometimes like, okay, I must have screwed up. It was a mistake, so you don't get the full why. There's one case I had where the person completely opened up. Where I got the why, and that was one that was on the. Alias called her Linda, she was on Today's Show, and she was in with her husband in shadow, with the voice alterating, on the story that they did, on Marathon investigation. And basically her why was, again, she had slowed down with age. She had posted a time that she was proud of on social media. A friend said, "What happened? That was really slow." And, somebody who kind of battled with maybe depression and, other issues as well, that really hit her. So then she would start taking her bib off her chip, kind of running untimed. So she's run the races, but she would have no time. And I really don't have, I say the chip off the bib. So I don't really have an issue with that. She's running, she has a bib, she just didn't want to be in the official results. Fine. Then one point she says accidentally her and her husband switched bib, they're running the same race, they wore each other's bib. they said unintentionally the first time. And so her husband's time became her time. And hey, that's a fast time, great. And she was getting all these kudos on social media, so they kind of kept up with that, where she would cut the bib off her chip, and her husband would run with 2 chips attached to his single bib, or in his pocket, or however they did it. And so that continued, but then it kind of escalated to where, okay, she ran a Boston qualifying time, said she was going to run Boston, but then she started getting age group awards, and accepting them and posting those on social media. So it really escalated from an honest incident to something that was blatant. So, once I caught that and contact her after just telling her what I had, and finally she just fully admitted it, and she kind of gave me the whole story. She went on the Today Show, on an article, and talked about that as well. So that's about the only case I know, where I really kind of got the why. And I'm still in contact with her, to this day.
Wow. So what are we going to do on this podcast? What's this podcast going to be about, and where do you see it going?
Really, it's kind of open, but I definitely see, a lot of them. I think most of them will have guests. So, what I'm looking at is guests from, race directors, timers, just, kind of people around marathoning, ultra running, and whatnot. And then also, I would love to get, people who've been accused of cheating, whether I wrote about them, whether, maybe they were accused, anybody who's actually admitted to cheating, and has been accused, of cheating, whether on my site or elsewhere. I'd love to talk to those people to kind of get the other side and, have some debate, with them. I mean, there's some people who very loudly, deny, what I feel is obvious. And I would welcome really any of those people in. I mean, I think, I would be hard pressed if, anybody who I called out on the site, said, hey, I want to come in and defend myself. I can't think of a situation offhand where I would deny them that opportunity.
It seems to me.
So, hey, if you're a cheater and you're listening, give us a call.
Yeah, it seems to me that there's also these cheaters, or alleged cheaters, as we'll call them. There's an element of, it's almost like a psychological disorder where they defend themselves even in the face of overwhelming evidence. It's like they can't really, they don't really put in context how far gone they are. For example, the girl that we were talking about from my group, she, again, because I'm the sympathizer and I'm the devil's advocate. So I reached out and said, listen, this is going to get really bad. I'm convinced you cheated. I'm going to say you cheated. And if I were you, I would just get out in front of this and just say, I did something dumb. Here's what I did. And then it goes away really fast. And she doubled down and got even more mad.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, same thing. The guy who, he had a time that actually, he had a marathon winning time, and he tried to use that time to enter Boston. Well, at the time of the race, they knew he had cut the course, and they just put him in the half marathon results. But he was on the initial entry list for Boston. He never would have it never would have been validated. But I looked at it, and the guy, he claimed he did the full marathon and whatnot. So I wrote about him. I wasn't able to contact him beforehand. It might be one of those, it was so obvious where I didn't necessarily feel, the need to. Usually I do try. But he contacted me and said, hey, he absolutely ran the whole course, and basically, again, he would have won the marathon. And this guy was not, he was at best a 4.5 hour marathoner. But he would have won the race, and he was doubling down, saying he did it. And I provided mountains of evidence, and he eventually goes, you know what? If you would have asked me this, I may have missed the turn. Well, the problem is he missed 13 miles. It's a 2-loop course around a lake, basically, and he ran 1 loop. And so you don't accidentally, unknowing, miss 13 miles. But he was just defending that, and people were believing him, who weren't runners. And then I heard from a course official, where he said it was an accident, and he's like, the course wasn't well marked. I'll work with the course, and he's offering to help out the course, and at the race, and the race is ticked off at him at this point. And so I heard from a race official who said, yeah, we caught him going around the loop, and he told me to shut up, and he said he just passed the leader and the lead bicyclist to win the marathon. So he was actually claiming on the course that he won the marathon. It's just nuts. He ran 13 miles. I mean, it's bizarre. And again, he he didn't, as far as I know, he's still denying it, but I haven't talked to him since I think I had a series of like 3 or 4 articles that went up within a day on, as stuff was developing with him. But I can probably give you 20 more where
I think we should
so
include
obvious and people
in our wish list of people that we talk to, like, there's got to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist that could explain this. And then the other person I was thinking of was maybe try to get John Ronson from the Publicly Shamed book to talk about public shaming and its effects and things like that. Those would be 2 kind of angles that would be interesting for people to hear.
Oh, that'd be good. And actually, I do have. I'm working on a sports psychologist as well, so we'll coordinate our guests. It was actually somebody who was. Be surprised that the co-hosting gig was in high demand. I got quite a few inquiries on that. One of them was a sports psychologist.
Well, I'm sure he wouldn't have been as funny.
So you beat out a sports psychologist, and yes. So I definitely want to get him on, or a sports psychologist if he's not able to do it. Because that's as to try and get the why if we can't get it from the horse's mouth kind of thing. Definitely, I think we'll talk there. And we have a lot of guests already lined up and booked that we'll be recording and releasing. So it'll be fun. So so that's the way I see it going. I see a lot of shows kind of like this, maybe a little more focused and targeted on maybe a specific article. That's worthy of a little more debate. Again, the story I'm working now on the Deca Man, I think that's interesting on a bunch of levels. Again, I'm still doing my investigation, but there's so many angles and so many layers to this story on this Deca Man article and the whole thing where it's I think it's going to be worthy of more discussion. And actually maybe Alex, who was the runner who was accused and disqualified, she may we may be talking to her on the podcast as well. So
that'll also be a good one for me to dig
if
in
that works
on.
out, and if she's still after my follow-up article comes out, if she'll come on.
Yeah, and I could dig in on that and be the devil's advocate too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely angles to do that. So we'll kind of keep that there. But it's one of those. It's like, okay, there's data. So can we argue the data? Or are we going to? Okay, there are issues with the race, but that doesn't. So you kind of peel it back to find out what really matters, which is, hey, did she cut the course or not? There's a whole bunch of side issues and other issues going on, but in the end, at least as far as I'm concerned, the key issue is, did she intentionally, shave laps off the course? So then that's what I'm working on determining.
Perfect. Maybe in the process too, we can go get someone like Jane So to come on.
Oh, that would be a big get. And actually, I did reach out to Mike Rossi. He declined. So if you're familiar with him, everyone listening probably will be. But he was kind of the one. Really, I owe him. I probably wouldn't. Without him, I wouldn't have started the site. So, he as far as the whole public, and that's kind of the angle I wanted to talk to him about, was the whole public, the public shaming, and really went on both sides. He was, the runner who, let's run, just piled on, and then he kind of piled back, and it got very ugly. And that's where I thought, why are we spending so much time on this guy? Who else, are there any other cheaters out there? Because it got well beyond, did this guy cheat a race? And I've written about 100 runners who I think, cheated more blatantly than Mike did. So it's, very interesting. And the downward spiral that kind of happened after that was interesting. So he would have been an interesting one to speak with. But it was someone on that level. So I definitely have a long list of, runners who I'm going to, attempt to, and we'll attempt to contact together. You may have better luck than I do.
Especially if they hear me on here giving you the business back at you too,
Yeah, exactly. So I think once we get some of these up and running, and I think that we have a very high caliber of guests already, committed to come on. I think that'll just kind of, breed more aids, more top level guests, and then, hopefully a comfort level where we can have a reasonable debate where I'm just not going to, pile on and, on these people if they do agree to come on. I mean, anybody that comes on and wants to defend themselves, I can respect that.
Right. Well, can you tease like a couple people that are coming up next? Just so that people know.
Yeah. We a real interesting one that's coming up. We already recorded that one. So Mark Roy of Sports Stats, and we had a real interesting conversation as far as we talked about cheating and how they detect the cheaters, and he gave us a couple stories that were very interesting and also kind of helpful information regarding technology on what runners can do to make sure that they're getting, their bibs are in the right, placement and all the kind of things that could lead to not getting red at the timing mat. So so I think that was very interesting. That's our first one. We've got Frankie Ruiz coming on. He's a race director of the Miami Marathon, and he's been on the forefront, of fighting against cheaters and bandits in particular. He's posted some some videos at the end of the course where they pull runners off the course if they don't have bibs. And I can't remember the exact number. I don't want to say it wrong, but it's in the hundreds that they pull off every race of runners who are without bibs. And then we have Bart Yasso, famously the mayor of running from Runner's World. We're recording an interview with him. And a lot more. So it's definitely exciting, and I have a lot more that I'm working on scheduling. So again, I think we'll have some good guests. I'm probably using up all my A-list guests really early. So we may have a drop off. I don't know. That may be it. I may be went to the well too deep right off the bat, but I'm thinking it'll kind of. I'm thinking about having those guests on, then we'll get some other guests who may not have come on initially. Once they it kind of gives us some credibility in a way. So so I'm excited, and definitely we'll talk to some getting some more regular runners, and again if we can talk some cheaters. There's notorious runs. We'll try to get Rosie Ruiz on here or something. So we'll see.
You never know. So if somebody's listening to this, first thing that you need to do is you need to go to iTunes or whatever it is you're listening to this on and subscribe to the show and rate the show and review the show, because if you do those three things, it's going to move this show up rapidly in the ratings. And if it does, then more people see it and it gets more credibility, and then it's easier to get guests and more attention to the show.
Yes, absolutely do that. And check out, I'm working on some cool things with Patreon. So Marathon Investigation on Patreon. So look that up if you want to support. Give a few bucks a month, and you get a little bit of extra content. So definitely, if you want to support me and Scott, anything on Patreon that supports both Scott and I. So if you learned about me through the podcast, definitely support us that way. So Scott gets his share as well. If you hate Scott, just go to the Marathon Investigation page and just donate to me, and he won't get a penny.
And I'll make sure.
And with that, I'll let Scott plug his podcast as well and what he has going on.
Sure, and I'll also put the Patreon link in the show notes so that you can just click that link and it'll go right to the page if you want to donate. And then if you are interested in me and you want to learn more about me, I have a funny running podcast called 10 Junk Miles. Sometimes serious, sometimes a bunch of people getting drunk and talking about their running life. It's a good companion for your run. You can think of us as your running friends when you don't have anyone to run with. And I also put on some races, but I'm not going to talk about that in this one. I'll talk about that on the next show.
All right. Sounds great. So again, keep on listening. Again, download all the podcasts that are out there and like and share and review. And any ideas for guests or anything, email me at Derek at marathoninvestigation.com, DEREK. I'd love to have anybody on who wants to come on who has an interesting take. And if you've cheated, definitely give me a buzz.
Yeah, and I'll put that email address in the show notes too, so that you can just click right there and give us some feedback.
All right. Thanks again. We'll talk to you next time.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Marathon Investigation Podcast. Have a questionable result to report? Visit marathoninvestigation.com to contact us or email Derek at results@marathoninvestigation.com.
Another case closed for the Marathon's silent guardian.